Okay, so we're looking at example 2, finding the interquartile range. So we're going to practice this again. So remember, the first thing we need to do is organize our data from least to greatest, and make sure you write small enough so you can fit everything and everything's organized. So I have 444 is my smallest. Oh, I made a typo there. We'll get rid of that. Then we have 466. We have 512. 532. 560. 636. Okay, I'm not going to make that. So I'm going to redo it so that everything fits. And I need you guys to start doing that too. Instead of just shoving it and making it work, let's actually go ahead and leave enough space and rewrite things when they don't fit. So 444 is my smallest, 466, then 512, 532, 560, 636, 698, and 728. So that looks much better. So remember, I'm going to find my median. So I'm going to go to the middle, and I have these two numbers in the middle. So remember, I add those together, I divide by 2, and if I do that, my median is 546. So remember, that's going to be my Q2. Now I want to find my Q1, so I'm going to find the median of my lower numbers. So if I look, I have these. So I have these two. Remember, I'm going to add those together. I'm going to divide by 2. So my Q1 becomes 489. Now I want to find my upper quartile like we've done in the past. So I'm going to go to the middle. I have these two numbers. Add them together. Divide by 2. And make sure when you get a number that it falls between those two, because if it doesn't, you've done something wrong. Okay, so that's my Q3. So now my interquartile range is from Q3, which is 667, minus my 489. So my interquartile range is 178. Okay, so what does it mean by interpreting the interquartile range? So my interquartile range is 178. Is that a big number or is that a small number? Well, let's look at our overall range is from 728 to 444, so that's almost 300. So our interquartile range is not that big looking at the numbers that we have. I don't really think we have anything that's way out there. I don't really see any outliers in our data. So how do we check for those outliers so we can actually mathematically calculate them? So I'm going to have you write down these notes. You might want to pause the video again and then press play when you're ready to move on. So outliers. So if I really want to calculate if I have an outlier, so a value less than, so if I'm looking at my quartile ranges, right, if this is my data, here's my Q2 right in the middle, here's my Q1 down here, and my Q3 up top. If I have a value less than this calculation, I have an outlier. If I have a value that's greater than Q3 calculation, I also have an outlier. So I can calculate those to see, are they a lot less than my Q1? Are they a lot more than my Q3? Are they really outliers? So if I look at the data from the example that we all just did, I'm going to plug in my values. So my Q1 was 489 minus my 1.5, and my IQR was the interquartile range. Remember, we calculated that was the Q3 minus Q1. So I get 226.5. Then I can calculate my upper one, Q3, plus these, because I want to know, is it bigger than that? So I want to go plus. So my Q3 was 667, plus the 1.5 times my interquartile range, which is the same for both of these, is 934. So did I have any numbers that were greater than 934 or any numbers less than 226? Well, no. So if I look at the lowest number back at that data, it was 444. So there were no lower outliers. And my top number was 728, which is not greater than 934, Therefore, in that example, there were no real outliers. Okay, so now you're going to try all of that on your own. Now this might be tough. There's a lot of calculations, so just take your time, look at your notes, follow your examples that you have, and if you need another example, you can also look in your textbook page 415, and they give you another example to help support your understanding. So I've given you the steps. So remember, you want to find the Q1, Q2, and Q3. So that is organize your data, find the median, find the lower quartile, the upper quartile, find your inner quartile range. So remember that was Q3 minus Q1. And then we're going to use the formula for any outliers. If you need to look back in your notes to find the formula, please do so. But don't just say, I don't get it. You can look back at your notes. It's just utilizing the formula and plugging in the values that you've calculated. So when you're done, go ahead and put your answer in the text box on the right. So in your answers, so for answers, so that I know that what you're doing, I want to see your Q1, I want to see your Q2, and I want to see your Q3. I want to know what your IQR was, and I want to know what your calculations for outliers. So I want to see the calculations for your outliers. So I want you to type all those answers into the text box on the right so that I know that you can at least calculate part of those questions. Okay, so now I have some questions for you to answer, and I want you to type these into the text box on the right. So I want to know, how do I calculate the range? How do I calculate Q1, Q2, Q3, IQR, and how do I calculate the outliers above or below your data set? So I should see you typing your answers into the text box on the right. Again, if you need to, look in your notes. You have all this information in your notes, and if you can't find it in your notes, go to textbook pages 414 to 415, and you should find everything right there in your textbook. Okay, so now my questions to you. What do you need more practice with? Do you need more practice calculating the range, the median, the Q1, Q2, Q3, the IQR? I think the hardest part is going to be calculating whether there's outliers or not. So write down, what would you like some more practice with? And I'll see you tomorrow during class, and we can go over all of this material together.